following program is an exclusive Disruption Networks production.
So you just bought your dream home, and now it's time to move. Let's face it, nobody likes to move. All the packing, unpacking, lifting, upstairs, downstairs, and broking everything, including your back. Let the professionals at EJA Moving Company take all the stress and pain out of your move. Competitively priced moving, relocation services, office moves, and complete packing and unpacking services. They work with everybody to make it simple and easy for you to move and relocate. Call EJA Moving Company at 315-335-0516. When it's time to relocate, have EJA Moving do all the work for you. Hit them up online, ejamoving.com.
Want to know what's going on at the D? Hit up DisruptionNetwork.net and check out our events calendar brought to you by the Events Co. Find out about upcoming guests, special events, concerts, show schedules, community activities, and more. Get connected at DisruptionNetwork.net.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for tuning in. This is episode 3 in season 2 of the Unstoppable You podcast with me, your host, Heather Beebe. Again, thank you, Utica Hemp. Another episode brought to you by them, and congratulations to Utica Hemp for just recently opening up their 5th location in Rochester. They are crushing it. I'm so proud of you, Joe and Chip. Keep up the good work. Another announcement, we have the third anniversary party for Disruption Network happening this Saturday at the Jewish Community Center. The address to that is 2310 Oneida Street. Doors are going to open at 6. The show's at 7. There's going to be Haley Jane Acoustic, Live Noah, Trampoline Jetstream, Annie in the Water, and then the last set is going to be a Fleetwood Mac tribute with Haley in the Water, which is a mix of Annie in the Water and Haley Jane. So it's going to be awesome. Those guys are really great. If you've never seen any of them, super talented musicians, definitely going places. It's just we a really good night to come and celebrate the 3rd anniversary of Disruption Network and everything that they're doing here with the network, changing lives in Utica, literally disrupting the way things are done. So tonight I have a really interesting guest here with me. He is the 5th Ward Councilman, for the city of Utica. I have Delvin, yeah.
Delvin.
It
happens
Moody.
often.
Yeah, well, I used to babysit a kid named Devlin. Yeah. So, anyway, Delvin Moody, thank you for joining me here tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So, most importantly, I mean, I just think that you're doing some cool stuff. Maybe some people have heard of you, maybe they haven't. But you're somebody that should be on their radar if you live in the city of Utica.
Maybe. So I've been told.
I think it's great. You should be proud of that. And, February is Black History Month. And
absolutely.
I think that it's really cool that you're doing what you're doing, but you're not leaving where you were from.
Right.
You're bringing it back home. And I think that men like you need to see more of that.
Absolutely.
And I love that.
Absolutely. I think it's so important because this moment that we're sharing in terms of Black History Month, it's not just something that is far removed from today. In many ways, it's not just about a Martin Luther King or Rosa Parks, but I think there are moments of history being made even now. I mean, I was just at a NAACP event last week, and Yvonne Irvin spoke before I did, and she is the first African-American woman to ever serve on the County Board of Legislators here in Oneida County. So it's like moments like that, moments of history that are always being made. And I'm just glad to be a part of that.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's how fresh it is.
Right.
That's how fresh it is. That's the reality of what we deal with and how alive
absolutely.
The inequality is.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only for people my age. I mean, I'm young, but I think it's good to have positive role models. Good for people to know, to see. I think young leadership, but also good to see diverse leadership. Not just the same people always leading and governing and stepping forward. But diversity for many people and many young people might give them hope that they too can step forward and can make change in their community. That is not just rhetoric or something that they can dream about, but it can be tangible, and real, and that they can actually make change.
Yeah. Absolutely. And regardless, I kind of mentioned this in the text messaging. We had, every hurdle that we get, and especially for young, I think, Black males, Black females, growing up in an area that's not been attended to in the ways it should have been. It's almost like an automatic hurdle. Like, there you go. Here's 10 hurdles for you. Good luck. And to show that, okay, I'm going to see those hurdles. I'm going to recognize those hurdles, but they're not going to stop me.
Absolutely.
And it is possible that you can be behind all of those hurdles and still look where I am.
Absolutely. And the amazing thing about the Fifth Ward, which is historically Cornhill, but also Fifth Ward goes into a subsection of West Utica between Oswego and Plant and down to Sunset. But Cornhill is the melting pot of Utica. I know that now Bleecker Street is being deemed as like the international district, but Cornhill in many ways is still the melting pot of Utica. And the residents and the citizens that make up Cornhill is ever changing. It's for example, Cornhill is not predominantly African American anymore. It is mainly New Americans, refugees, if you will, and primarily Asian American. It is the predominant composition of Cornhill now. Then African American, Latino, then white Americans. So, we have a diversity here. I mean, it is.
I read, what was it, 42?
Yeah, 42 languages.
Yeah, spoken in Cornhill. That's incredible.
Alone,
Yeah.
So me, as trying to represent that dynamic, it is a tremendous opportunity to learn and engage. I mean, in many ways, to see different cultures and try to be their voice as best as I can in City Hall. There's not a single district outside of the Fifth Ward that is as diverse, as culturally, significant. I mean, it is so vibrant, Cornhill, and so I have the best of both worlds. All of the districts touch Cornhill. All of the wards rather touch Cornhill. I mean, we have the Utica Public Library. We touch the Parkway. We have beautiful history in terms of families and culture. So I'm really blessed to represent the people of Cornhill.
Yeah. So, in case, even for my sake, a councilman, what exactly is your responsibility?
Yes, so as a city council person, I am a municipal legislator, which means that we look at laws and draft laws for the city, mainly looking at anything to deal within the jurisdiction of the city of Utica. And also to the primary focus of the city council is not only to make laws and adopt legislation, but also to be the purse strings of the city. So we have a budgetary issue, and we're getting ready to go into the budget season now. But it's also to look at the budget, approve the mayor's budget or make amendments to the budget, oversee taxes and things of that nature. So it is a financial aspect in terms of budgetary issues and financial. But it's also to make laws and legislation and be a voice to make sure that city government is moving in the direction of the people.
Yeah.
It's a common council, which means that we are supposed to represent the common person.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So upon my research of you, preparing for today, I read on one of the interviews you had last year where you were mentioning the poverty lines in Cornhill, what they are, and how important it is that although we want to better certain things, we want to keep it affordable for the people that live there already.
Oh yeah.
So how do you see, because this is a common thing. You go into a bad area, it's cheap because it doesn't have the quality of life, say, that another neighborhood would have. Right. So it's cheaper. So you increase the quality of life, and immediately it becomes something they want to increase the taxes on, and by property or however it works. But how do you see that working out?
So it's twofold. Now I've since the moment I started running, and then when I became elected, housing is a major concern, and making sure that we have a comprehensive plan for housing is huge. So it's twofold. So you look at the poverty rates of Cornhill, and you recognize that 40% of Cornhill lives at or below the poverty level. Okay, so that's a huge number. So you have to say, okay, I have to deal with the subset of people that are currently here. So that's where you do a lot of affordable housing. You make sure that you have housing options that are nice, that are beautiful, that are not operated by slumlords or absentee landlords. So you provide housing that is good, that is affordable, that is adequate, that is for people to live in. But you understand that affordable housing is limited to an income eligibility. So if you make more than that, right, you're not eligible to live in that housing. So if we only have affordable housing in Cornhill, we'll be creating a community that only has high needs persons. And not to say that they don't deserve housing, they do. But we have to think strategically and comprehensively as to not to densely populate one subset of the city to only have high needs populations. So we provide affordable housing, but we should also, the real goal is to have housing that's affordable, meaning single family homes. Maybe it is that, condos or lofts. I mean, if people want to live in Cornhill that make a little bit more money, maybe they make 60, 70,000, they should be able to live in Cornhill as well. And there should be housing that's affordable for all sorts of people. Like right now, if you are a college student or recent graduate, and you make $42,000 a year, right? 42,000 is not necessarily a poverty, right? You're single. $42,000 is pretty decent money for Utica. You're limited as to a place you can live in Cornhill, whether it's a single family home or apartment. You're really strapped in terms of your housing options. And if you're 42 like me, you don't want to live in an apartment that might be the worst. You want something that speaks to the level of success that you have. So we have to provide options that are affordable housing, but we also should provide options that are mixed. Affordable, but also maybe some high end stuff. Maybe some things that are not necessarily high end, but for the young working professional. So it's thinking clearly about that and how we can really have a housing stock that is representative of all of Cornhill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? There are people that would hear the word Cornhill and like, I'm not, no.
Right.
Right. And how do you make it, appealing to those who otherwise wouldn't think to,
Yeah. So again, that's multifaceted. So it has to be a marketing first to allow investments and people to know that Cornhill is on the market again. That it is not a negative place to live in. It is a beautiful community, and that Cornhill is not just James Street and a few blocks east or west of James Street. That it is a huge residential area, the second most populated community in sector in our city. So part of it is marketing. How do you be representative as a common council person? How do you share the message that Cornhill is not just a negative, bad place to live in? So that's part of it. The second thing is, in terms of people moving in here, you have to have reinvestment, and I think that part of that is looking at the housing options in terms of urban renewal and economic development. Looking what we can do with the URA housing stock, how we can get those, really prefer those houses go to people that are going to live in them. And they do that now, but seeing how we can maybe ramp up what the city is doing in terms of urban renewal homes and homes that are owned by the city. And also, I think that we should, I think it's time that maybe looking at the Economic Development Committee in the City Council to see how maybe we can work with the land bank and just seeing what housing options we have and see how we can get people to really reinvest in those. And then part of that is the housing that options that are there that we feel with new investors could be something more than what they are. I think that is going after absentee landlords that rely on property managers that are just not really fulfilling their duties and responsibilities, and saying, look, if you're not going to make this property the best that it can be, we'd rather work with, as a city, somebody that is committed to making these homes beautiful and open to not just low-income families, but anybody that wants to live in them.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Because it's easy, if you're a landlord, it's easy to, from what I've experienced, sometimes the government backing of rent makes landlords sometimes want to rent to low-income families just because they know that the rent is coming from the county or whatever. And so
guarantee.
It's a guarantee,
Yeah.
and they don't put any money into it. And over time, I have heard from homeowners that, the absentee landlord aspect and the property manager relationship has not worked, and it has in many ways made their property value as a homeowner gone down and things of that nature. So it's going to take a look. It won't be done overnight, but I think just starting the conversation would be a step in the right direction to say, how can we really address the housing issue? And I think at the end of the day, you really transform communities through the housing stock.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
the meat of the community itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I see an improvement in Cornhill in general.
Absolutely.
I've only been a resident of Utica for about 9 years, but I did study here, and that's what brought me here. And 20 years ago, Cornhill wasn't very nice.
Right.
You see, you can see a big change.
Yeah, so the thing is, with the direction that we're going, how can we improve? And I think part of that is strategy and comprehension. I've been working with the Community Foundation and talking with them, and I've really bigged up the idea that we need a comprehensive master plan for Cornhill. I know that's been done a few years back in terms of getting a master plan for a community. And we really see the impact of planning and strategy. I mean, when you look at the DRI and the Downtown Revitalization Plan, it is thought out, it is beautiful, it's smart, so much so till they were awarded $10 million from the governor because their plan was smart. And I thought to that, I said, well, if the city sees that planning is instrumental to changing communities like downtown, that we need the same level of planning, strategy, comprehensive connectivity to really transform the Cornhill community, which is the second most populated community in the city. So it's not that it's just a community or any community, but it is 13,000 residents in Cornhill plus. So we need comprehensive planning. We need a strategy. We need a master plan. And I think if we got that, the city can do their part. Street paving, streetscaping. I know Councilman Williamson wants to do trees along James Street and other aspects. We can do all of those things if it's thought out and planned. And then we have to say, what do we have? What don't we have? Right now, we don't have a grocery store in Cornhill proper. There's no grocery store in the Cornhill community. We have to think about all of those aspects. And it's going to take teamwork. But if you don't have a plan or a strategy, you're kind of throwing darts in the dark there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Do you ever find that there's competition between the planning on what neighborhood deserves more?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But what I'm seeing, there's a lot of resources going around that can go around. We're only 62,000 people. We'll find out the real numbers after the census.
Yeah, the census is going on right now.
So, we're not a huge city, but one thing I know, there are a lot of resources. And sometimes, too, a CDBG is a huge aspect of finances. There's been some concern or, critique about how some of those funds have been spent. But I think there's a lot of resources out there. And I think it just takes planning. I don't think any one community has to go lacking. I think every community, if thought out and done and managed properly, every community can have their fair share. And even if it's not having all that you want in this year, if you have a direction as to what you want to do, how you want to plan for the next 4 years, 4 or 5 years, you can say, well, you won't get it all this year, but we're working toward this, and it can build upon each other, and you can really begin to transform a community.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I saw another initiative that you're really interested in is the gun violence.
Absolutely.
And if you don't mind, I'd love to talk about that one as well. Especially, this wasn't a gun violence, this was just crime in general, violent. I witnessed the stabbing on Berry Street last summer. And I thought, wow, just over a dispute, an argument, and the black on black violence, like how bad it is, and of course there's the cop that is completely corrupt, all that stuff too. But one of the major ones out there is black on black. And that lacking, like, I guess the example of how to deal with conflict, in a more approachable way, right? Conversation, even, fighting with your fists versus a weapon, I don't know how this happens, but I feel like it's a huge, I don't know, in the black community, like the lack of emotional intelligence, maybe, or the examples of people being able to handle conflict without that kind of resolution. I don't know.
I think certainly there is a concern in terms of violence, right? But the issues of gun violence isn't exclusive to the black community. It really is a public safety concern amongst the whole city.
Yeah.
And even when I've spoke about it, I wanted to not frame it as being a Cornhill problem or a black problem, but that this is a public safety issue.
Yeah.
Because while there are shootings that may happen in one community that are glorified, we've seen acts of violence that have reigned the whole gamut of multi-communities. I think about what happened, the Boilermaker, I think about what happened in other communities. So the domestic violence and violence in general, right, is huge. But in terms of the African American community, right, it is no secret that we have seen a uptick of particular gun violence the past couple of months in this year in particular, and it is alarming. I mean, the community is saying, what can we do, right? So I'm particularly invested in the issue. Number one, because for me, gun violence and the victims of gun violence are not just people, right? They're names that I know, they're families that I know, they're people that I know. And so it becomes personal, even if I'm not saying I'm close with all of the people that have been affected by gun violence and everything, but in a city like Utica with 61,000 people, know the people involved. And so it does hit home, and then it almost says, not again. And so I think what we don't want is we don't want to have a normalized reaction to the issues that are happening around gun violence. And the community is saying enough is enough. Yeah. So as an elected official, right, when the community is saying enough, when people in Cornhill are saying we have to do something because children are afraid, families are nervous, the community feels like
kids have died this year.
Right. Yeah. It's incumbent upon me to at least respond to say, I hear you. I'm concerned, I care, and what can we do to work together? And it's not to say, how can we work against the police? How can we work separate of the police or any other public safety figure? But it's a public safety issue. So what we're saying is, how can we bring the public safety sector, police, fire, and other aspects with the community to bring about a viable solution toward the issues that we're facing? So when you think about gun violence, you have to think about it in this way. It's in one way prevention, which means how do we make sure that our young boys and girls, right, don't get into this particular lifestyle, that they perpetuate gun violence, right? So prevention, how do we have things for them to do, activities, a youth center, a community center, mentorship opportunities, recreational opportunities. That's preventative measures. But then it is intervention, which is a little bit tricky, because intervention says that the people now that are shooting and having acts of violence, are not necessarily kids in school. You know, they're adults, they're grown. So how can we as a community have a response to that, right, to the grown folks? And then how can we be preventative to the young people? So there are a few things that we've been thinking about that we think might help the situation, that can mitigate some of the issues that we're seeing around gun violence. But it's not a solution in its entirety. I know the sad part of life in reality is I know that as long as there are people with emotions and guns, there will be shootings in the city.
Sure.
But it does not have to be back to back. It should not be back to back. And what we're saying is, even though we know that there will be acts of violence and gun violence in the community, does not mean that we don't work to actively fight every single day against the narrative that young boys and girls have to live that life. And so while there are communities that are pushing gun violence and, just hard upbringings, that may be the culture, or, that just may be the negative consequence of just life, I'll be working with the city and others and whosoever will to make sure that our youth have an option to know they can go to school, they can get a vocation, they can work, they can have an honest living, they can take care of their families when they get them, and they can live a prosperous life.
Yeah. I think that's what was cool about you, that you grew up in this neighborhood, and that you represent somebody who is from here, and doesn't fall for, the bad, I guess, being a voice for the good.
Right, and I've been fortunate. I mean, I can't say that my family's always been perfect. No person can pick the family that they're born into, and certainly, my story is like others. I had a single mother, to raise me with the support of my grandmother, and my father was there, and other aspects and different things. So I have a life similar to most people in Cornhill and really across the country. But I also had, a religious upbringing, and that helped to in some way provide good morals and things of that nature. Not only that, life can happen to anybody. But I had mentors and people to help me to say, you don't have to go this way, you don't have to do that, you can stay in this way. But somewhere between my life and my generation and the younger, it seemed like there's been a breakdown from older people, right? Mentoring, having real systems of mentorship on a community level. And I'm trying to bring that back.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, we had a Boys and Girls Club. We had, greater access to the Parkway Center. We had all of these other community centers, the Y and other things like that. Those things are not here today. For whatever, we had a skating rings, skate-a-rama, another aspect.
Yeah.
Those things are not here, and it's not one person's fault. But when you recognize that you don't have all of these activities that we had in the past, some things are coming, the Nexus Center and all these other things, but they're not here now.
Sure.
The Impact Center in Cornhill will be coming, but it's not here now.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's been, a good decade without something solid in place,
Right.
and that's,
That has entirely contributed. And that's a tough conversation.
Absolutely.
Because when you talk about recreation, when you talk about activities, some people get offended,
Yeah.
They say, well, we have this, that, and the other. But it has to be solutions have to be done without the ego. And sometimes in this community, things don't happen for the city. Progress is not happening because leadership has egos, okay? And so when we talk about recreation, I just had a meeting a week and a half ago at Cornerstone Church about the issue of gun violence. It was a community meeting.
Yeah.
And the first thing that came up when I asked kids who would normally be identified as in the wrong group, we were the kids who are normally labeled as being in the streets, if you will. They came to that meeting, okay? And we asked them, we didn't ask them what the solutions were. We asked them, what do you think the problem is? And they told me, they said, if we had more activities, me and my friends would not be in some of the negative activities that we're having. And so when I have kids telling me there's nothing for us to do, I don't need a response that says you're wrong. No matter what we offer in the city, and this is talking about from city government or as a community, no matter the great things that we have in the city, that means there's a disconnect between what we have and what people see.
For sure.
And I guess it's just a aspect of my leadership that I'm one to listen to my constituents in my community. Even if I think that they're wrong, if I know something to be true, that means that there's a disconnect between my truth and what people perceive. And even if that's the problem, then it is a problem.
Yeah.
So I do think that we have recreational problem, and I think the recreational problem in this city has fundamentally contributed to acts of violence amongst young people, because when there's nothing to do, idle minds wander.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they wander for what they've seen.
Right.
They're not wandering
Absolutely.
for, something constructive. They're
Absolutely.
wandering in the patterns of things that they've seen. So I'm a huge believer in emotional intelligence happening at a young age, whether it's on a playground playing with each other, and even if you have a dispute over a toy, you're able to handle that conversation by yourself, and you grow those skills of handling conflict as you get older. And there's a huge lack of, first of all, kids getting outside playing because the playgrounds are filthy, or they're just not functional. I've seen that myself. I have my young son going to different playgrounds, like what's available and what's not even accessible and what's filthy. But then also, I feel like the programs that are available, they're far from the areas that need the most, or they cost money. And
it is stuff. I've been really mulling over, and we the city did a parks and recreation report, I think, a few years back. But I think it's time now, not again to point the finger at any group, but to say, let's review this. Let's review what we have, what we don't have. Let's review the parks. Let's review perspective and reality. And let's see what we can do. Let's come to the table. Let's have a conversation about it. Some people don't like to talk to one another again, but I'm all in talking and building and then acting. But I'd rather measure twice and cut once.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
And some people rather cut twice and measure never. So so that's the difference in my leadership. But I do think that we need to review recreation in the city and parks and every aspect to see what we can do.
Yeah, for sure. Another challenge, and these are just my experiences, my opinions. In my personal life, I have phase one of my children. So I have one set of kids that are older, and then I have a younger set. My oldest daughter is 16. She grew up at a time we didn't have electronics like we do now. And my son's 4. Easily, I can disconnect from my son all day long, not know what he's doing, not have a conversation with him, not know anything, and he would be busy on an electronic. In my opinion, I think that we are very disconnected from our youth because of the access we have to technologies, things like that. And I do think that that's part of kids, wandering minds and things like that. Because we don't have that sense of community anymore. When I was a kid, when you're raised by your grandmother, you're raised by your mother, you're raised by the neighbor would spank you. If you needed a whooping, you'd get it from whoever was in charge at the moment where you were, So I think now kids are be alone. They're very alone. So I think that's kind of a contributing factor as well, which is not just from inner city life. That's everywhere.
Oh yeah, I mean technology has contributed to. I mean we are so we have access to the world yet so ever disconnected. I mean, so I do. I mean between Fortnite and Roblox or whatever it's called, Minecraft.
Yeah.
I mean. These kids now have everything, and they could talk to people in Japan, and you just never know. I mean, so I think that has contributed, and it also there's no communal gatherings. I mean, there's not many places where we gather together as a community, and that's not on any one person.
Yeah.
But it's us, and so I've been really interested in creating opportunities for us to come together as a community. I know this summer I want to do a Cornhill block party, and
I saw that.
and get us out and get us talking to one another and engaging with one another.
Yeah.
I think that's important to the vibrancy of a community. I think it's a quality of life issue.
Yeah.
Most people in this community, sometimes, not everybody, but most people in the city proper, they go to work, they go home.
Yeah.
They go to work, they go home, and they don't really engage in different community activities like that. But I think we got to bring that part of the culture, and a lot of times the community activities here, which I think is brilliant and smart, but they're sometimes frequented by the region, by the towns or the outskirts, or New Hartford or Whitesboro or Whitestown, things of that nature, coming in and not necessarily always frequented by those who live in Utica, right? I mean, you take a Comets game, that's a regional gathering point. People drive into that and then drive out and drive home. I think that's beautiful. I think Utica is the economic engine for the county. However, we have to figure out how can we have that same velocity of Utica pride amongst people that actually live in the city,
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the challenge. How do we get folks from Utica invested again?
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend and said, well, the color purple is coming to the stand. They said, I didn't even know that, but you ask anybody, those seats are filled up. Okay. So you ask by whom, who's filling up those seats? And I think it just speaks to how sometimes we got to reintroduce Utica.
Yeah.
I think that's JC said, Ella Cool said, allow me to reintroduce myself. I think that's what we got to do.
Yeah. That's an interesting point about the Stanley, especially as such a nice, we're lucky to have something like that in a city this size, I think, that brings such good acts, or whatever you want to call them. But that it would be marketed to the people that go versus the people that live next door. If you don't even know what's going on over there, what do you know? Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So what would you say, you shared a little bit that you grew up with a single mom, your grandmother, your dad was around. What would you say was the largest contributing factor to you caring about this?
Oh yeah, I would say my faith is a huge aspect. Growing up in church, I always felt called to help others and to the service of others. But for me, the more I read and learned and watched society, I felt that in many ways, this is just me, I felt that sustainable change was not only through a pulpit or within the four walls of a church or a religious institution, but I felt, it was difficult for me to only preach about Jesus on Sunday, right? Mm-hmm. To people who were starving Monday through Saturday. That was a difficult dynamic for me. And I felt that that my faith, Walter Rauschenbach, who's a theologian in Rochester, called it the social gospel. And I felt that my faith empowered me to be involved in the social gospel. And really I felt that the Christian message was that we are to be engaged all over. So I think now that has developed over time. I'm not still stuck in that religious frame of mind. I'm much more equipped to see the policy and the politics and legislation and speak to it from a strictly secular, religious, secular and political aspect now. But then the driving mechanism for me was helping people, serving my community, and I felt that the sustainable way to do that was through policy and legislation. And through policy and legislation, changing the structure and the decision-making process, or really sharing decision-making as a democracy with citizens, was the way to really change the lives of people. And so when I came to that realization that the way we're going to change lives was through policy, I was all in. NAACP, from there to founding with my good friend and sister Janisha Harris, the National Black Action Committee, Work I did in University of Rochester with different organizations, and I mean, even going to Israel twice with APAC and other groups. So I seen policy as the way to do all of that. Policy was the driving force. And so, working statewide on policy, advocating for educational funding statewide, working on national and international politics, nationally with the National Black Action Committee, internationally with APAC and other things for the American-Israel relationship, critiquing them at many times about their relationship with Palestinians and having the humanity issues there, settlements and other things. I began to think also too about Utica. And when I was going back and forth from Rochester home and thinking about, seeing my community, seeing the potential we had, but seeing the untapped potential of Utica in Cornhill, I said, I think it's time, that I think I had something that I can contribute to the conversation. And so I put my hat in the ring because I thought I'd be good to represent this community.
Yeah.
That's why people should run. People should run because they have ideas that they think could help. And at the core of it, that's why I ran. I had ideas that I think can help move Cornhill and the city of Utica forward.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So what is your plan?
Oh, that you have another
like
3 hours.
5 years. Yeah, 5 years. 5 years.
Oh,
just
5
in
years.
In a nutshell,
Yeah, I want to help Cornhill. So we get 2 years every term. It's only been a month, and I'm already pushing and chugging ahead. It feels like it's been 3 months, right? But with the number of meetings that I'm going to.
There's a meme going around right now on Facebook. It's the last 5 months first 5 months of 2020 have been hectic.
I know, right.
It's finally February or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly how it feels. But right now it's about impacting Cornhill. So I'll stay here 2 years, run again for re-election, because I'm sure it'll take me more than 2 years to get the things that I have to get done. And after that, we'll see where life takes us.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. I knew another guy from Cornhill. He was a professor at UC. He passed away of cancer a couple of years back. I don't know if you recognize his name. I believe it was Paul Young.
It sounds familiar.
Yeah. He was good. He taught. I took my degrees in interdisciplinary studies, but it was a triple concentration in history, technology, and globalization.
Yeah.
And the history, I took a lot of basically the movement of people, and I took some courses. One course I took at Utica College, he taught, it was about the African slave trade, basically. But he was somebody who was doing very well for himself, taught at Utica and lived in Cornhill, and he was not going anywhere. And I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, everybody in Cornhill is not poor. If Cornhill is 40% poverty, 60% of folks ain't
regular,
in poverty.
Yeah. And that's if you don't know that, it's very easy to just assume the worst, because any attention that hits the media is always horrible.
Oh yeah.
And
there are people in Cornhill. I mean, part of the I don't call what's happening in Cornhill the crisis, but part of the housing issue that we have, because you have a lot of families and older people who have been here for years, pillars in our community, that they raised their kids in that house, and I don't care if they got 20 empty rooms, they're not leaving Cornhill. So Cornhill is absolutely, it's so dynamic, and different people live here.
Yeah, it's obvious. So let's check out and see if we see some questions over here and try to. Oh, Sean. Okay. Oh, my aunt. This information is good for all of the neighborhoods. It takes all of the community, not just one corner. Okay, so another question here. Is availability of guns more illegally or accessible legally? Would tougher gun laws be effective on guns obtained illegally?
Yeah, I think that speaks to comprehensive gun legislation. I think we need that. I think we have things like gun show loopholes and other things like that. But what we see in many of the federal legislation and what's happening is that while guns are bought illegally in inner city communities, they didn't start out that way. Okay, so you had illegal gun purchases in many ways by people that were unqualified, that had illegal intentions. Now, you don't crack down, of course, no matter what law you put in. If somebody wants to break them, they can break the law. But there are things that we can do in terms of preventing guns from going into the communities and making them harder to have access to. And while it won't necessarily totally prevent gun-related violence in the inner cities and in the community, there are things we can do that can fundamentally help some of the issues that we have. And ironically, I don't want to say ironically because I'm a little bit more progressive than he is, but I think looking federally, Michael Bloomberg has a tremendous policy proposal in terms of gun legislation. Yeah. And I disagree with him on a few things, it's particularly his record. But Mike Bloomberg has a fantastic presentation in terms of comprehensive gun legislation.
Yeah. I think you identified at 3 separate points of our conversation tonight of things that I like to see in young people in general. One being a vision. You mentioned, throwing darts into the dark. I think young people without a vision aren't really motivated in which way to go. They're not sure, right? Also, the importance of having something to believe in, whether it's our, religious beliefs or, that being many different types of religion and whatnot, but just having something to believe in, having faith in something that it's more respected if I do this, or whether it's just even a really, really good mentor. For the last thing I was going to mention, but just those in combination of like how important it is that people have those things. So then when it comes to doing something that's like not appropriate, having an illegal gun activity or whatever, that you have a conscience in your mind saying, hey, you have that vision, you want to be this, you want to be him, or you want to be him, pick your choice,
But it's also difficult, most people who are in a particular lifestyle, who have to contend with a harsh upbringing. I mean, it is really socioeconomic, socioeconomic issues lead in many ways to people maybe acting in a way that they normally would not have. I mean, and so while I don't want to soften the blow of people who are committing violence and crimes in many parts of the community in the city, I also have a tough love, because I understand the dynamics that have led, right, to some people getting involved in a lifestyle that they readily would not have got involved. And that speaks back to the point of having a vision and hope, because some people say, look, this is all I can do. This is the only life that I know. And it becomes generational. It becomes multi-generational. It becomes a perpetuation of the same thing for generations. But if we infer that hope, if we are able to break that generational cycle, I think we'll be able to over time change the community. And we got to be in it for the long run. Results won't always happen immediately or overnight. But if you're doing the right thing and you think, okay, it might not happen now, but it might happen, we 5 years from now, we might look back and say, wow, that was a really smart legislation, a policy that really moved us in the right direction. We have to be committed to change, not just committed to what's politically expedient for the next election.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, back to why I believe it's important that when you are coming through, and I feel like we've talked a lot about Cornhill, but these same issues, they exist in rural areas.
Absolutely.
They exist, it's not just race specific.
Absolutely.
Vicious cycles exist in every, in low economic, situations, I guess, and it is a vicious cycle of, I just don't know better, so I can't do better,
Right, yeah.
And that's not always the case. It's not a large portion of the people that get out and make it, but it is some. It's always some, and those some are the ones that are so important to come back and look and show the others.
We have to. We
Yeah.
have to. It's really.
But they don't always do.
Right.
They don't always do.
Right. Yeah. But it goes back to being that community. You got to be. It takes it. When they say it takes a village to raise a child, that's
Yeah.
the truth. It takes
Yeah.
all of us.
Yes.
All of us.
Yeah.
Not in silos. It takes all of us loving one another, having a love and compassion for our fellow human being. And that sounds mushy and warm, but it is the absolute truth.
Absolutely.
If you care about your fellow human being, you'll be a little bit more compassionate.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I go back to this example when this comes up for me. I've spent some time in Brazil. It's a third world country. When people make it down there, the middle class, for example, just even the middle class, you have concrete walls that divide your homes.
Yeah.
You have no clue what the neighbors are doing. You don't really always get to know them, you know. But what the walls do is protect your things, you know. And if we don't care about people who want to take our things, if we have no compassion that they also deserve to eat, they will take it anyway in some other way. And that's why crime goes up when when the unemployment goes up, the crime goes up. There's reasons, because desperation causes people to do horrible things. Right. So it is important. Community is important, and caring about each other is important, because if you think you don't have to do it, you'll be building walls around your house to protect your things.
And good policy, look, at the core of it, if it's good policy, if it can improve, when good things happen, bad things are minimized. So you can improve educational cycles, you can improve the job market, you can improve the economy, you can make the city more habitable to live in. I mean, the quality of life issues, entertainment, things will start to be better.
Yeah.
And if you just get in that direction of how can you improve, not always solve, but how can you even improve, things will be better.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic of that. I mean, I really am.
You see it already.
Yeah.
I feel like I see it. I
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And our city has tremendous potential. City of Utica is moving in a direction. We're not perfect, but we're moving in a direction where I think that in the next 4 or 5 years we'll see transformative results for our city. My focus is make sure that Cornhill is in no way left behind in that transformation, and make sure that we can progress as the city is progressing as well. And so I'm trying to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
And support that narrative.
Yeah. This was a question I wanted to ask you as well. As they are doing the downtown revitalization, the cost of these lofts, and it's absurd. Yeah. And what people, I think, don't realize is when something like that happens, it pushes people into areas and kind of makes a gap between affordability, in housing, and then just the 1%. So, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So in the short end, I think that diversity in housing is good, right? Because there's some folks in Utica that are rich. I mean, they have money and they want a loft, and it contributes to them. They can live in the city, sure. But we have to make sure that we don't gentrify communities, right? And I think that goes to the real heart of the question. How do we make sure that we're not pushing our communities? And here's the other aspect. If you are transforming a community to be higher end, right, what alternative are you providing to the people who used to live in that community?
Yeah.
It's one thing to say, okay, comprehensively, downtown is moving in a different direction. We want to start putting in high-end lofts and condominiums in this community. And so, the cost of living here is going to be increased, okay? At the same point, you only create affordable housing units where if you make $42,000, you can't live in them. Okay, so now I become a part of a working poor class, okay? Where I used to live in was affordable, but it's no longer because of gentrification. But the options that you're providing, the brand new homes, are only going to affordable housing, economic eligibility requirements to get the tax credit from the state. And so then I'm left with an $800 rent from a landlord that lives in Florida, that doesn't care about if the property manager comes to take care of anything of the quality of house issue, and then I get the codes violation when things happen. So we have an interesting, we and it's not always happening like that, but we got to make sure that it doesn't.
Yeah, for sure.
We have to make sure that we don't make the environment where we are isolating marginalized communities and displacing them in our city. Yeah. And so when things happen like that, of course, I'll always be at the table saying, let's make sure that whatever we're proposing doesn't have a negative effect that we might not be thinking about while looking for the next beautiful
shiny thing.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, so what other groups are you directly involved with? Church, clubs, community service groups? Do you get involved with the schools?
Oh, yeah, absolutely involved with the school district, particularly now. Work at MVCC with a group called Gear Up. So I help middle schoolers graduate high school, get into college, and that types of thing. Community organizations, so many to name. Too many to name.
Yeah.
Too many to name, but I'm actively involved in a few different organizations around Utica, and looking to be more involved with whatever I can be involved in if time permits. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So that's my aunt asking.
Oh,
She would
okay.
appreciate to know that you're taking your master's at Colgate right now.
Yes.
In religion. Yeah.
Colgate
so
University, absolutely. So right
a
now I'm
beautiful
focusing
campus.
on. Oh my goodness, I was just there today for class.
Yeah.
So I'm working, going and doing City Hall, have a son, right, and going to get my master's at Colgate University.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty busy.
Yeah.
Pretty busy, but
Yeah.
it's good. It's
Yeah.
good. We're working.
It's all good stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. I don't know. Are there any other questions? No, that's all. Okay. Great. So I wanted to mention that coming up, it's next. I don't know the day of the week, but it's February 12th. The Thea Bowman House is having it's going to be the City of Utica is evening at the Thea Bowman Day, and it's going to be open to the public. I believe it starts at 4 o'clock right there on Genesee Street. It's the corner of Eagle and Genesee Street. You can park on the Park Ave side or the Genesee Street side. And if you're unfamiliar with what the Thea Bowman House does, they provide amazing opportunities. Mostly it's for the children, obviously. That's what you see. But the reason they provide these, it's like preschool, daycare kind of after-school program for hundreds of families in the Utica area of lower economic status, I'd say. It gives the parents opportunity to work.
Yeah.
And
I went to Thea Bowman.
You did?
You
did?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a Thea Bowman kid right there, on Lafayette?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So
Yeah.
there's two sites.
Right.
Yep.
Right. I went to the Lafayette
Okay.
one.
Nice.
Yeah.
I just toured that.
Back in the day.
Yeah. It's been going on a while. So
Yeah.
she started this. She was an amazing individual, and part of Black History Month, they're going to make this day, February 12th, Thea Bowman Day in Utica, which I think is just an honor. I'm really honored to serve on that board.
Absolutely.
Because of the families that we do serve, and the women that, it's not just women, men and women, but Jane has been there so many years.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
That woman is like, I don't know what they're going to do when she
Absolutely.
decides to finally retire, if she
Yeah.
ever does.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that is an event that's open to the community. So I did want to share that because if you don't know what they do and you haven't seen what they do, check it out. It could be something that you might be interested in helping out with at times. I know they have a lot of volunteer opportunities.
Absolutely.
So if you could share some other ways people can get involved, just, maybe like 3 things that you can think of off the top of your head. And
Yeah. So the first thing is they can go to my website, delvinmoody.com. We're always updating some different cool things that we're doing. One way for people to get involved, they can join my Citizens Advisory Board, which is primarily for Cornhill, but it's a good way to get involved into city government. With some of the things that we're doing on the council, we'll be meeting this Thursday at 6 o'clock at the Empowerment Center, 230 James Street. And we're really doing a big push for a block party this summer. So if folks are interested in that, they can email me at info@delvinmoody.com and say they're interested and volunteer. And there'll be some more strategic planning meetings coming forward to see how we can really make that a really big event and a staple event for Cornhill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Great. I don't know if you want to share your social media tags just if people wanted to connect with you in any other way.
All social media is Delvin Moody.
Yeah.
Simple, one word.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep.
Okay. And it's Moody.
Moody.
Yeah. Delvin Moody.
Yep,
So
you got it.
awesome. Good. Well, thank you so much for coming in. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This was great.
Yeah. One thing I always ask everybody before we end, if there's one piece of advice that you could share from your life experiences and how you've been able to apply it into your success. The unstoppableness, right? That's the point of my podcast.
Yeah.
What would it be?
It would be stay focused, stay on target. If you stay focused in what you're trying to do, think clear. Don't be swayed by the fray of what you hear. But if you stay on target and recalibrate yourself to that, you'll be all right.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be all right.
Awesome.
But the hard part in that is finding out what your target is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes we think that we're supposed to be doing other things, right? And sometimes the biggest idea, the shiny thing, seems to be the thing that we're supposed to be doing. But if you know your passion, your purpose, your drive, and you can stay on target, you can keep focused no matter what's around you, even if you have to recalibrate your life to that, you stay focused and on target, you'll be unstoppable because you're designed for what you're called to do. And if you're always doing what you're called to do and you're on target, nothing will shake that up. Yes,
that's good.
Yeah.
Really good. I like how you worded that. Yeah. All right, great. So thank you for tuning in tonight with this episode with Delvin Moody. We have here, right here in Cornhill, councilman for the 5th Ward here in Utica, doing some good stuff. So I appreciate you being a face to this community, being from this community. I'm just a white girl, trying to do my thing, and sometimes it's not the same for a young black male to see me talk about anything. But to see you talk about it, I think it's important to the community.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you for having me.
Yeah, sure. So, thank you for tuning in again. I had some switcheroos in the schedule, as you may have noticed. This was not the original guest I had planned for tonight. So. Next episode is 2 weeks from now. That will be Mike Oceans. He wrote a book. It's a survival guide to his daughters going to college. It is the coolest book. I've been reading it. I'll post the link so you can get your hands on a copy if you'd like to before I air. Then you can participate in the discussion. It's pretty opinionated, I would say the least, and I love it because as the mother of teenage daughters, I'm a huge fan of his aggressive manner and approach. So looking forward to that. So tune in 2 weeks from now, Unstoppable You podcast with Heather Beebe, where we have unstoppable people, unstoppable stories, unstoppable you, right here on Disruption Network. Have a good night, everybody.
So you just bought your dream home, and now it's time to move. Let's face it, nobody likes to move. All the packing, unpacking, lifting, upstairs, downstairs, and broking everything, including your back. Let the professionals at EJA Moving Company take all the stress and pain out of your move. Competitively priced moving, relocation services, office moves, and complete packing and unpacking services. They work with everybody to make it simple and easy for you to move and relocate. Call EJA Moving Company at 315-335-0516. When it's time to relocate, have EJA Moving do all the work for you. Hit them up online, ejamoving.com.
Want to know what's going on at the D? Hit up DisruptionNetwork.net and check out our events calendar brought to you by the Events Co. Find out about upcoming guests, special events, concerts, show schedules, community activities, and more. Get connected at DisruptionNetwork.net. Only on the D!